Welcome to the Why Music podcast, where we talk to independent artists about their journeys, the inspirations behind their music, and ultimately why they make music. This next artist is a pop rocker that's covered a lot of ground across the central US. With a laundry list of live show appearances and notable moments across her music journey, she's truly paving her own path. Welcome, Shelby.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I always like to start with where your music journey kind of all began.
Oh gosh, that's like how far back can I take my brain? So I mean, it's probably like most artists say. Now, I don't really think I'd say I've been singing my whole life, but I grew up just loving music, listening to music, going to concerts. And then by the time I was in elementary school, I did actually like get myself into the elementary choir, and then I did choir in middle school and high school. However, I didn't really take anything seriously at that time until I got into like late middle school. So in elementary school, you're taking music classes, I'm in choir, we had talent shows, and I actually was super into poetry. So I would write poems, and in my head, they were songs, but I couldn't play an instrument. And at that point, I really didn't know I could sing. I just liked writing poems, and then I'd try and have like a melody in my head. But that was very counterproductive when, again, I had no way to actually put it to music. And so by the time I got into middle school, I had done some solos. And the first time I really realized that I loved music and I just wanted to sing was my sixth grade talent show. I auditioned, and my mom is very much, and I actually appreciate the fact that my mom is not like a sugarcoater. She doesn't like, she's going to tell me how it is, whether I want to hear it or not. So when I told her I was going to audition for a talent show, she was like, well, you have to have a talent. Like, what are you going to do? Like, my mom's like an in-person Simon Cowell. But again, I appreciate it because if I do something well, I know she genuinely means it. And she's not just like, yeah, good job. Like,
Hmm.
no. So I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna sing. And I loved Hannah Montana. And I don't even remember. It had to have been somewhat, I don't remember what year the Hannah Montana movie came out. I really should know that. Probably like 2010 or something. No, do math, Shelby. You were in middle school. Okay, so late 2000s. I get into middle school and I wanted to sing The Climb. And so I auditioned. My mom couldn't be there because at the time she was a teacher. So my stepdad got off work and he came with a camcorder because, that was like early stages of smartphones and the camera quality really wasn't good at that point. So he's recording, and I'm the last act to go. And I start singing, and he's recording it. He tells me later he was crying, and the whole audience like got really quiet once I started singing the first couple lines. And at the end, I had a standing ovation, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I love the way that this feels." And at that point, then my family was like, "Oh, okay. So what do you want to do with this type thing?" So again, I was still writing poetry, and when I was in fifth grade, I actually won a poetry contest of all things for it was for elementary school students. So the top 15 or no, top 10 poems, which I didn't even know this existed, but one of my teachers recommended that I like submit. So if you made the top 10, you got your own page rather than sharing a page with other poems. So I got my own page. I made the top 10 with my poem. And so I wanted to keep on writing. And I saw an interview because this was when Taylor Swift was, first having her blossoming career. And I saw her in an article basically say that she taught herself guitar when she was 13. So right before I turned 13, I told my parents and my grandma, I was like, I'm going to teach myself guitar because Taylor Swift said she taught herself guitar, so why not? So they bought me this. Actually, I'm hiding it. that guitar. That was my first ever guitar. I moved away from the mic. Sorry. That was my first ever guitar. And it was this pawn shop guitar. I was told if I took it seriously, I could upgrade. So I basically played. I'm really grateful I took a liking to this in middle school because, honest to God, I don't think I could teach myself an instrument right now, being an adult. So I'd play till my fingers bled, and then I just started getting to the point where, because you had to develop those good old calluses. Um, and once I started getting that down, I just started writing more music and putting it to the guitar. And then come 14, a year later, I started playing at bars, mostly during the day. And if it was later at night, I had to obviously like be with my mom or it had to be before a certain hour. But that was kind of the start of that. Like I continued on in high school doing musicals and concert choir and went to college my first couple years for music in Nashville, Tennessee. So when I was doing music there, I met so many people that I still keep in touch with now, like my producer, who I still go to Nashville with almost every single year to record with. I met at that music school in Nashville, Belmont University. And so it's just kind of been something where now, I look back on the trajectory of it, and every time I sit down and write, it's coming from that little girl who just wanted to play guitar and write songs like Taylor Swift.
That's I mean, the Hannah Montana and Taylor Swift combination, that's like just breeding you for a true like I'm doing this at however old.
Yes.
That's like the prime time for being a young girl in music, I feel like. I mean,
Because
who better than Miley Cyrus and Taylor
oh,
Swift?
no, 100%. And I don't know, how old are you? What year are you?
I'm a 2000.
You're 2000. Okay, I'm a
Okay.
97 baby. So
Okay.
we're still, I've got one of my sisters is an '01 baby, and her and I like watched the same stuff growing up.
Hmm.
So I know that you and I are very
Yeah.
much the same, like, wheelhouse of shows.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was yeah, Hannah Montana. Hannah Montana was actually one of those shows that when I was like I saw the like commercial for it, but when they were like promoting it before it became a thing, I was
Yes.
like, that looks so stupid. Like I will not watch that. And then I was like, okay, fine. Like fine, I'll fine, I'm in. And I've watched it since as an adult. Like I've definitely rewatched it at least a time or two. I was always one of those where it's like I'm not like Justin Bieber, One Direction. I will get on that bandwagon when it's no longer a bandwagon. I just couldn't do the like thing at the time. I was like, it just I was too cool for school. I couldn't do it.
I get
Um,
it. I get
so,
it. I
but
definitely
yeah,
was a fan. Well, no, Justin Bieber had to grow on me because everyone was obsessed with him. And
yeah.
then when he came out, honestly, when he came out with his Believe album, I was like kind of like, ooh, kind of like this. And then obviously Purpose was super, super good. But I've always been a One Direction girly, like 2011 and now. If they ever have a reunion tour, I will have to sell my house. Like my husband's gonna have to we're gonna have to find a hut to live in because I'm going.
Oh yeah, no, I was after they were like the thing. I just couldn't do it. I don't know.
That's fair.
I had to go against the grain, even if I would have liked it at the time. But at least you'll own it. You'll own it. So,
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm like forever a fangirl.
um, so with how I guess my question more so is how did the songs start to kind of form themselves together, being that they like were truly like originating as poems and then you just kind of threw this flavor of Taylor Swift guitar in the mix. Like how did those two things like how did that process of putting those pieces together kind of look?
Well, it was kind of like I said that I always kind of had melodies. I just at the time didn't know how to play an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And I also didn't really take myself seriously as, an artist per se. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just thought of, oh, this is a way to express myself and the emotions that I'm going through. And then I would hear melodies, but again, I was like, I don't have any way to make those two blend together until I start teaching myself guitar. And then once I was able to teach myself guitar, I continued on writing. But at that, like by the time I was playing guitar, I actually realized that I had a gift. And so I started taking it a little bit more seriously. So when I'd sit down, it became more of a combined process of I'm going to sit down and write a song rather than I'm going to write a poem and then find music. Not that that doesn't, happen still sometimes, because there's sometimes where I have a great idea, but I have no melodic concept whatsoever, and vice
Mm.
versa. Normally, though, lyrics come to me regardless of if there's a melody. Like, I have a really good friend who is kind of the opposite. Like, we tried to write songs together once in Nashville, and he had melodies but no lyrics. And I mean, you think that that would jive really well, but I was like, I need a concept in order to like have a melody. And he was totally the opposite. He's like, I have this melody and I just need to find lyrics. So maybe we should try that again. That was like, 7, 8 years ago now. Um, but and then, once I got the guitar down at that point, I just started you really using it as an outlet. So if I was gonna write, it always came with the guitar. So my first ever full album that I released last year called Teenage Diary are all songs that I wrote between the ages of 13 and 19. And so, as an adult to like go back, and it was a 2-year process of just taking trips to Nashville and recording the songs as I could save up money from performing shows here. So to see that all come together from like songs that I wrote on my bedroom floor after I'd just learned how to play my guitar, and, reflect on where I was at in that point in my life because of the fact that I had wrote songs in those phases. uh yeah, it was the most magical thing, because as a little girl, I was like, I would give anything to go to the studio, and I just never thought it would happen because it's crazy. I'm getting on like so many different tangents, but it's crazy to me how much music has changed since because neither one of us are that old, but when I started playing, 14 years ago, the Spotify, Apple Music, like you couldn't distribute music on your own, let alone like connect with, you had to have connections to get music out there. So
Yeah.
in my head, I was like, oh, putting out music is like such a like,
Intangible thing.
yes, exactly. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can literally call my producer anytime. And as long as I have money, I have a car, I can get gas, like I can go, it's just it's crazy to me. So yeah, it's really been like such a crazy journey.
Yeah. No, I mean, up until the car I have now, I had CDs sitting in my center console, and the only reason I don't anymore is because my car doesn't take them anymore, and I'm a little butthurt about that. So it's like I know it's like that's not the thing anymore, and it's so much easier to just plug in your phone, and that's what people are doing. But I'd like to have the option. You know what I mean? It's like one of those things that it's like as soon as you take it away, it's like, well, now I want it again.
I got rid of my CDs when, oh God, like 2016, because of the same reason. And I was just like, well, I have Apple Music now. And, I had my whole center console was just CD cases.
Mhm.
And that's actually, I regret it now looking back. Like at the time, it was so freeing because I was just like trying to find space for every CD I bought.
Right.
Now I'm like, why did I do that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't have a CD player right now, but I wish I would have kept those, especially
Yeah.
because some of them were like my Hannah Montana CD, my Lizzie
Of
McGuire
course.
CDs. I'm like, why did I get rid of those? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel you on that one.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how things have changed. I haven't been like doing it as involved, like doing the music thing as involved or as actively as you have. So you've like lived that portion of it. I've only like been lucky enough to have done it in the portion where I can upload it from my computer and it'll be in everyone's platforms like 2 weeks later.
Yep.
But it is interesting how it's kind of changed over time. Um, in bringing out like these nostalgic old teenage songs to make an album,
Mm.
which is one crazy to have like that collection of that from then, and which is probably just like a time capsule in itself, which is just a really cool,
Oh
like
yeah.
even if you did nothing with them, cool enough to still have those.
Yes.
But in bringing those and being like, I wrote these six, however many years ago, like all these years ago, I want to make them into a like finished product now. How much of the original like songs like remained? Like were there a lot of like rewriting kinds of things? Because obviously, like as you
Yeah.
develop over time, you're gonna
Right.
develop that skill as well.
Yeah.
So is it like truly like 13-year-old you wrote these lyrics, or is it like 13-year-old you gave you the idea, but like 24, 25-year-old you actually is what we're hearing?
That's actually a great question. And the only thing that I really changed about them was the production, because two of them I had released with another EP when I was first going to Nashville. And ironically, my now producer was interning with a studio and he now owns his own studio. But at the time, we both, that was like my first time in a studio and it was his first time like watching someone else produce music. And so we came back together for this album and I was like, these two songs I want to have redone because quality wasn't great. I was a college student, so like God, I could only afford so much, It's not like I was gonna get high quality when I just like basically what can I do, you know, to get music on a budget kind of thing. And he was looking for experience. And so two of the songs, Break Your Heart and Mirror Mirror, he reproduced. And I'm obsessed, especially Break Your Heart, because he used a drum. So it was, most of it was either him, like, because he can play almost every single instrument. So he would get out a bass, he'd get out a guitar, and then he had a drum kit that he had on his Mac. But it was a set that he had like purchased a Travis Barker digital set. So he was playing Break Your Heart, and it's such a banger now. But the only thing that's really changed since when I wrote these is I started out doing primarily country music. And I grew up listening to everything with my mom. Like she truly just was like a sponge with music. So I was as well. Like she'd go to any she primarily was a country enthusiast, but we'd go to like rock concerts. She'd go to the pop concerts with me, and God bless her, she took me to like Hannah Montana and stuff like that. And so I just loved music. But at the time, I was doing country. Most people in Nashville are pretty much known for that, unless you're in a scene that's like, on the outskirts of downtown where you have more like indie pop and rock type artists. But so back then, all country. And I, so the two songs that I had previously released were like country releases at the time. But my songs always had a little bit of like angstiness to them.
A little bit of an edge.
Yes, yeah. And so I told my producer, I was like, I know you know me as a country artist, and that's kind of all I've ever known. But I've always kind of like wanted to dive into like pop rockish, like Paramore, Avril, but I've always had very much imposter syndrome because I'm like, you know, I can't play like that. I don't
Hmm.
know if I can write like that. And so I was like, here's kind of where I'm seeing my song sounding. And so the awesome thing about him, his name's Dallas Hendrickson, he was like, yeah, like I'd give him an example song and then he'd be like, okay, so this is how you want it to be produced in this type of sound. just based on a couple songs. I give them as examples. So outside of the production itself, because there were a couple songs, like I have one, oh gosh. No, that one was always supposed to be upbeat. Which one was supposed to be? Oh, it was The Outside. The Outside, it's the first song on the album, if you listen to it in order. And that originally was supposed to be like a slow, sad song when I had originally wrote it. And back then I used to like post all my videos of me after I wrote songs on my Facebook, my personal Facebook. So yeah, I have those,
Uh,
yeah, to look back on.
we
And
love a good old catalog.
my God. See, yeah, no, it's great. So I looked back and I was like, this could be a really good upbeat song. Like it's a sad because you're heartbroken, but like this would be really fun if it was upbeat. So that was the first song that we actually like switched the tempo and the original production, even though I'd never actually like previously released that specific song. But other than that, all the lyrics are the same. So I did think about with one called Liar Liar. Some of the lyrics are a little bit redundant. And, I'll say liar like multiple times. Obviously, it's called Liar Liar. But I actually told Dallas, I was like, part of me wanted to like revisit it and update it for like, at the time, 25-year-old Shelby who's recording this. And then I went, you know what? No, I want it to be like raw to like authentic to my actual teenage self. So same thing with like there was another song called Done With It, and they're in the bridge. I say darn, and don't get me wrong, I cussed, like I did cuss, but when I wrote it, I was like, oh my God, like my mom's gonna listen to this. Like I can't swear. So I wrote darn, and it actually melodically sounds better than if I were to say damn, because it's harder to like damn. And I went dun to, I don't know. So we kept it. We kept it. And everything lyrically is the same. It's just the production and like the genre that kind of took a twist.
Wow. I feel like that's what I was expecting, but at the same time I was like, I'd be interested to see if you made any like core changes to it in terms, but it's like
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's like, okay, we're recognizing this as like teenage me writing this, like
Yeah.
basically a decade prior. Like we're recognizing this for what it is. We're not looking at this as if the current version of who I am as a songwriter now wrote this, because that's a different lens. We can't
Oh
put
yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
dangerous lens to try and put on that viewpoint. But no, I mean it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, like it's not been recent enough where it's like I feel like I can go back and just like revisit it. It's like that's been
Yeah.
sitting in the time capsule for such a long time that it just needs to be kept in its true form. And doing
Yep.
anything to it other than like making it sound prettier from a like you said, sonic production standpoint, like
Yep.
she just needs to be what she is. So we're
Yep.
just gonna let her ride her wave and we're gonna just package her up nice, you know?
And it was more fun that way. I was like, if I take this too seriously, I'm not gonna have fun. And that was the whole point of like writing to begin with, was to have fun. So
True.
yeah,
Yeah.
makes me feel like a teenager again, but honestly, I never really I still don't believe that I'm 27. Like I mentally feel like I'm 17. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's I'm right there with you. I turned 24 on Monday.
oh, happy
And
birthday.
thank you. I released a song on my 23rd birthday called 23 last year, and I'm like, you're trying to tell me that song's about to be a year old. You're trying to tell me that I'm like also at the point where like this is life now. It's not like, did this for 4 years and there's another chapter and all these
Yep.
other things. It's like this is it. This,
Oh
do we
yeah.
want this to be it?
I've talked to so many adults who basically say it just continues as you get older. So like when you hit the next decade, you'll feel like you're still a decade younger and it just continues on as you age. I'm like,
Interesting.
okay, cool. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's It's just old is weird. That's all there is to it.
Aging, my stepdad always tells me, he says, "Well, aging's better than the alternative, so I'll take it."
That's fair.
Like,
That's a good way to like put it in perspective.
aging is living, so
At least that number is still going up, you know? That
yeah,
number could just be frozen in time. Like let's just let that number keep climbing.
yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Happy early birthday.
Thank you. What do you find most often inspires a lot of your writing?
For better or for worse, real life. 'Cause
For better or for
no,
worse.
I truly
I
mean
love
it.
that.
There's so much greatness in like being able to reflect your life in music,
Hmm.
whether it's just to get it out there to like heal or to have fun. But then as far as like inspiration wise, that can suck sometimes because I've been being told by my mom and even some other people who actually like do music and not just my mom, telling me this in a loving fashion. But I've been told for like a decade now, you can't just write when you want to write. And I know that, but I always have struggled with that. And now that I'm
Hmm.
an adult trying to like do music and I have a full
Balance life.
job still right now, and I'm married, and I like, I have a nonprofit. So it's like I've got so many things that sometimes I just don't. It's not even I can't get myself to write. It's I need to like take a nap or go to bed or something. Like especially because I'll play like super late shows.
Hmm.
And then, so Monday I had a really late show, and then I had to get up and go to work. And I went home and just went to bed. Like I was like, I'm zonked. Like I can't do this.
Hmm.
Um, so sometimes it's just a matter of balancing life, but a lot of my writing comes from like personal emotions, personal experiences. So when I wrote the songs that ended up being on Teenage Diary, a lot of them were like heartbreaks, first loves, people in my life who treated me badly, not just people I dated, but like people, friends, family. So some of the like I did another, this was probably like a year. No, it was right after the album came out. So it was probably like 9 months ago or so. I had another guy who did an interview with me. He was like, "So you got a song in there, Liar Liar, and it's really like angsty and angry. Like, could you really like break down the inspiration behind that song?" And I was like, well, it's kind of a combination. But yeah, like that was how I got through that moment. So yeah, even right now as an adult, sometimes I'm like, am I too oh my God, this is so bad. I'm better at writing songs when I'm like sad or angry than
No,
I
that's a
am.
valid.
I
I was
have
waiting for that to be something that was said because I get that a lot and I feel the exact same way.
my poor
It's
husband, like, because the studio's not he loves music, but it's not like his life. So if we go to the studio, he's like super bored because it can take like 8-10 hours to do
hmm.
a song or two. So he'll be like, why why do you have all these songs for X, Y, and Z, but not for me? And I was like, well, um, you make me really happy, and I apparently write happy music. So for our wedding, I surprised him with a song that I wrote for him, like for our first dance last year. So I was like, now I don't ever want to hear that I never wrote you. It's like the most loving song I've ever written.
Just pull it up on Spotify and shove it into his face. Be like, I don't want to hear a complaint. Look at this is proof and evidence right here.
I was
Take
like,
it.
yes. So it was like, this is a problem to have. Like, it's out there. And so yes, it's definitely hard. And even right now, I have my next concept. It's not gonna be an album, it's gonna be an EP.
Hmm.
Whether or not I turn it into an album at some point, possibly, but I'm basically gonna be doing an EP about I have OCD and
Hmm.
it's very misunderstood. Like
Hmm.
how debilitating it is because a lot of people just think you're a neat,
Organized.
yeah. And I'm like, I'm actually rather disorganized because I'm a creative. Not that every creative person is disorganized, but I definitely
I would
am.
say it's a stereotype. I would say it is a sometimes accurate stereotype.
I'm not the worst, but I definitely am a little bit scrambled.
I like to describe it as organized chaos.
Yes. Yes. Uh-huh. Yep, that's my office actually isn't that bad right now, but sometimes it can be. Um, but yeah, so I have three songs and they all have O, C, and D as like the first letter
Ooh.
in each song. Just because I wanted to, well, it's obviously something that like I struggle with, but then I was like, well, if I put it out there, it's not only therapeutic for me, but if someone else listens to it who doesn't understand it, like I hope that maybe they'll have a better idea of it by the time all that's out there. So again, like a lot of it comes from struggle.
Unfortunate circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's I get that. I get that. It just is, there's something about it that's easier. Um,
The tortured
I
art.
yeah. The torture, yes, you're entirely correct. Yeah, it's but because it's just like it's one of those things where it's like the way I think about it is when you're like happy and you're like in a positive experience, you're not going to want to sit there and think about it and reflect on it and
Yeah.
like dive deeper into it and like dissect what's making you happy. You just want to enjoy the fact that you're there.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
is on the negative side, it's like, okay, like I need to deal with this because like it's usually one of those things that's like not just going to go away on its own. And so it's like you have to find that way to just dismiss it.
Yeah.
And typically for people that are going to create in any form, the creation is going to be that said outlet. Like that's just kind of how it happens. And so then that's what the songs are typically about. I will say that I've gone a little bit differently. I have multiple songs out about my boyfriend, but I'm waiting for the like it's always like that's where it's like those are the ones that he likes. The other ones are just like too slow and sad. You know, it's just it's like it's either about him or it's like sad and depressing and there's nowhere in between. So I get
Yeah.
what you're
Oh yeah.
I get it. I'm right there with you.
That's why, regardless of if people like Taylor Swift's music, that's why I do have such a respect for her as a songwriter because I'm like, obviously she started primarily just writing things going on in her life, but
Hmm.
now it's like she can just make concepts and run with
Yeah.
them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't think I could be that like lyrically cohesive and
Mm.
proficient on just like something I haven't fully experienced.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I've had people come on here before and say that they will write like from an outside perspective of other people's situations or something like that. And
That's
it's
true.
just like,
Yeah.
and it's just like, I don't, you lost me. You know, like I just, that's just, I don't know if I could touch that, you know, it's because it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how far off it is from reality. So
Yeah.
like one of the songs on my Teenage Diary album is called People Always Leave Peyton's Song. And I based it off of One Tree Hill. I don't know if you were a One Tree OTH.
I never
No. Well,
was.
and you live in North Carolina
Is it
too.
based in North Carolina?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
Now
One
I'll
Tree
have to watch
Hill,
it.
oh, it's so good. It's a fictional place, Tree Hill, but it was filmed in, oh my gosh, why am I drawing a blank? It's filmed in North Carolina, but what freaking city is it filmed in? It's gonna hit me at the like most random moment, but um, oh, Wilmington.
Okay, that's out
Wilmington.
east. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. So I actually want to go there very badly. I would love to have someone locally like do a music video with me for that song because
Ah,
there's all of the like houses that they filmed in. Obviously, it's not like I'm gonna go in a house, but it'd just be cool to be reflecting in areas that it was filmed in.
Mm-hmm.
So Peyton is one of the many main characters in One Tree Hill. And she's also a tortured artist, but rather than being a singer, she's well, she does end up being in music as like a producer at one point and in a studio, but as a teenager, it's more just through art as far as like drawing and painting. So she's very angsty, she's very hurt, she's very alone. And so her whole concept throughout the show is people always leave and Peyton pushes them away. So when I was going through a really, really low point when I wrote that song, I was making references to her as a character, but I was also feeling them myself, which is why it was easier for me to write it. But again, I'm like, ooh, there was a combination like Shelby and Peyton, the fictional character meeting. So it wasn't 100% a concept.
Sometimes I mean, sometimes ideas just kind of pop out, you know, and I think it's one
Yeah.
of those things that it's like the more you do it, the more the random things just kind of pop into your head and become
Yes.
inspiration points. We don't always know where they come from, but if it's
Mm-mm.
something you can run with it, you know? So,
Yep, you make sense of it later. Or just don't make sense of it. Just
and that's
let
fine.
it-
Let it be what it's got to be. It'll do the trick.
yeah.
Everything happens for a reason. It'll walk its way through.
Yes. Oh my gosh, amen to that.
If you had to create a new genre around your style of music, what would it be called?
A new genre. Oh my gosh. Well, my whole like shtick is champion because I have a huge fixation with the Rocky movies, which I don't know, have you seen the Rocky Balboa movies? Okay. If it makes you feel better, about a decade ago, I hadn't either. I was a senior in high school. My mom had me watch them. And I wrote a song with a friend when I was in Nashville called Champion, based off the movies, because Rocky's a boxer and well, he's a struggling boxer. He doesn't start off like obviously as a like champion boxer.
Yeah,
He's just
that'd make for a
boxing.
bad story. Just
No,
the
it
winner keeps
absolutely
on
would.
winning.
No, he starts on the streets. He's like doing some rough stuff for money, and eventually he gets to be this really like, incredibly famous champion boxer after, the movies go on. But he goes through lots of like loss and grief, and his whole mantra is, it's not about how hard you can get hit, but about how hard you can get hit and keep getting up and keep fighting back. So I wrote a song with a friend who also loved Rocky, and it's called Champion. And it's also a song that's, on a side note, getting like a 2.0 release because the current release is just subpar studio college kids working with college kids studio quality that did it for like $100 or something. But it's getting like a rock 2.0 version that I have been sitting on, but I haven't released it yet because it's my baby and I'm like, I want to market the song really well before I just throw it out there. So, but I I would say something around like along the lines of champion, just because that's again like my whole thing is my Rocky. Like my nonprofit is called Champions for HD, which stands for Huntington's disease. So it's like that's my whole thing. But my songs are also like kind of sad at times. So I'm like, I don't really know how champion would
The
like
sad
work there.
champion.
An ongoing champ. Let's say a work in progress, like imperfectly
Ooh.
imperfect. That's so cliche, but like I mean just keep swimming like Dory. That's like the most interesting question, but the most terrible answer.
If it makes you feel any better, nobody has an answer for that right off the bat. Everybody hates that question because I
Like
ask it and they're like, well, you want me to come up with something out of thin air? Yes. It's exactly what we're asking for.
Yeah, I was doing quite the workaround there.
I always
Yeah.
get the like pop, indie, rock, like just like five different like genre words put into one. And it's like,
Instead of
well,
like a
that
name for
kind of
it.
already exists in some
Right.
way. That's not what I'm
Right.
asking for, you know? So I like the work in progress thing though.
Right.
That's just a life theme.
I was gonna
You
say, I
know?
feel like any genre of music could be applicable to or even just regular human beings, all works in progress. But you
I
know,
mean, it's if it's got that like rock kind of piece to it, I feel like rock's a little rough around the edges.
yeah,
It's not
no,
if
it
it's never
definitely
quite like
is.
this like super clean cut sort of thing. And so
No,
the song's done, but like technically
yeah, yeah,
there
yeah.
could be some polishing there in the terms of, you know.
It's funny you say that. That totally just like unlocked another memory in my head. I worked for like a couple years with this music development group. You paid like a membership, but they would help you with like songwriting and business practices, like doing music
Hmm.
and stuff you don't want to think about, like setting up an LLC and getting insurance and paying people, like that type of stuff. But then there was also creative aspects to it as well. So one time in, I think it was 2021, they had a songwriting day and it was based in Nashville. So you came and they like split you off into different groups where you would present a song to different people that they had connections with, like in the Nashville music scene. Some people who were like, I don't know, producers or who like radio hosts or, different things that fell into different genres. So at the time I had just wrote a and released my first song since honestly since I moved home from Nashville and like went through all this like grief and loss. And so I wrote this song about, faith and God and basically how that's evolved for me over time through my trials. And so when they asked us to split into different rooms based on genre, I was like, oh, well, this song's technically like poppy, but it's a Christian-esque song. So I went into the Christian room, not having any like plans to be full-blown Christian artist, even though I am Christian. I was like, I don't want to be like 100% a Christian artist. And this kind of solidified that for me because they listened to it and they were like, actually, it wasn't, I don't even think it was my song. I think it was I can't remember now I'm like going on a tangent, but I know there was another guy who had this amazing song and they were like, you can't have a Christian song not have a resolution. Like there has to be a happy ending. And I was like, but that's not life. Like, it's not
True.
like you're gonna write a song and all your problems are gonna be solved. Like it might help you in the moment. Even if you like have a relationship with like Jesus, it's like, okay, well, it's helpful, but it's not gonna, it's not like all of a sudden you're gonna have no struggles for the rest of your life because you're religious. So I'm like, that's not how this works. So that really turned me off because I was like, so you can't, according to you, and I know there's only a group of two people, but I was like, you can't have a song without a resolution. And that really did not sit well with me. So again, with rock, like pop rock, I like that there really is no expectation of like, you've got to have this uplifting message that ends on a really good note, regardless of if you're talking about like overcoming demons and adversity. Like, you can't end on that. I'm like, so yeah, that just unlocked a memory.
If you're someone that is constantly looking for new music and trying to find artists before they blow up, then I'd like to introduce you to a project you're going to love. Indie for Your Inbox is an email newsletter that brings you a new song from an independent artist every single day. Uniting music lovers with the future face of the industry, we want to provide indie artists a new way to bring their music to their future fans. Click the link to subscribe now and find your future favorite artist. Is there a song that you've written that you think best embodies who you are as an artist? Your one song sampling platter. Listen to this, you'll like the rest.
Yeah, no, it's definitely Champion, even though I already talked it up.
Life is a ring and there's no way out. Put on my game face, swallow the doubt. The crowd is watching, hoping that I fall. One step at a time, I will make my name. This fire inside me can't be tamed. I know my worth, and I will fight till I win it. Hit me left, hit me right, knock me down a few hundred times. On my hands, on my knees, you will never see me clean. No, 'cause fight is fight, roll with the punches. That's how winning's done. Going one more round when you don't think you can, but baby, that's what makes a champion.
I wrote that song back when I was still in Nashville, and I actually moved home from Nashville because I found out that my family was unknowingly battling something called Huntington's disease. So I don't, have you ever heard of that?
No.
No? Okay, cool. I get to
You
I
get to
get
do
to
your
be the one
spiel.
to bring it into your world. So basically it is a hereditary disease. If your parent has it, then you are at risk of having it. Like flip of a coin, 50-50% chance. And any other sibling who's biologically, I know people are like, well, duh, but I have a lot of like half and step
Mhm.
siblings. So my siblings who are biologically from my dad are at risk of having it. So my grandpa got diagnosed when I was in Nashville, and at the time I was like, I don't know what that is. Maybe it's something you get with age. But then come to find out when my grandpa got diagnosed, my dad said, well, now I'm at risk, and if I have it, then you guys could have it. And it's like having ALS, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's. So basically, at the same time. So basically, your brain just begins to deteriorate and brain cells start to break down over time. And there's no cure or treatment in present tense. And so basically, if you get diagnosed, it's normally prolonged, like midlife, you know, 40s is not, that's really sad to think that like 40s is midlife because it's really not that old. But that's the average like onset for Huntington's. So my dad ended up getting tested only because I had a little sister who was 9 years younger than me, and she was super sick, couldn't figure out what was going on, and she was just mentally and physically deteriorating. She wasn't obviously like, you know, nauseous or vomiting. It wasn't anything like that. It was just that her mental and physical state was deteriorating really rapidly. So my dad got diagnosed, and I knew at that point in time that I was at risk. And he called me the day I moved into my sophomore year at Belmont. I was in my dorm with my mom and my stepdad and a couple of my other sisters. They left. My biological dad called me and he was like, your little sister tested positive for juvenile, which meant that that's an even rarer form where you get it as a child. So all these symptoms start before the age of 20. And she was 11. So I not only decided I was going to get tested, but I basically went through that entire school year just like hearing how my sister was getting worse and worse and worse. So I came home for summer of 2017, right before my junior year, I tested positive and I decided to move home because I was like, oh my God, I don't really know what to do with this information. And my sister was getting very much worse. That year she stopped walking and talking, and she got a feeding tube put in Christmas of that year. So I'm grateful I did move home because I wouldn't have been with her for like those last few years. Because she did lose her battle in 2020. Not to Obviously, COVID had nothing to do with it. It just happened to be terrible timing that she was put on pediatric hospice. And when they said that she was, probably only going to have a couple more days, she was at the hospital. And you can only have one person, a parent, with a minor. So the emergency team basically got an ambulance to release her and have her sent back home to be with all of us when she ultimately passed away. But she passed away on Easter. So again, being like very, I was always semi-religious, but that really like charged my Christianity at that point because I was like, my sister's going to pass away on any day. Easter's kind of the best example of passing, and having a better life ahead. So Champion, I wrote before I ever knew about, my sister having HD or my dad, before I got diagnosed. And then after all this happened, I was like, wow, I wrote this song about overcoming adversity and rolling with the punches. And then all of this happens. So I really like latched on to that song, even though I wrote it. And it inspired my nonprofit. So it's called Champions for HD because I was like, this is a terrible thing, but I want the name to be optimistic. Like you're a champion. You're not, you're a survivor. You're overcoming this, even if you don't feel like you are. So that one song, like, has truly changed my whole life. And I want to meet Sylvester Stallone, who wrote Rocky. He is Rocky. The man's like 77, and I'm like breaking a sweat because I'm like, I need to meet this man before he passes. I don't want that to happen. But like, so yes, that was the longest way to say that Champion, like if I could ride or die with one song for the rest of my life, that's mine. It would be Champion, like no ifs, ands, or buts. How emo are you now?
Well, that took a lot of different directions, but I don't know how you went from where it was to I just want to meet Sylvester Stallone.
I do.
in such a short amount of time.
I've told that story so many times that I'm just like it's devastating, but like I'm just
doesn't sound ideal. I'll be honest, doesn't sound fun.
That's my little elevator pitch though. So I'm like, but on a positive note, I do want to meet Sylvester Stallone.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean so you wrote the song prior to all of that's very interesting how that like timeline just transpired. Like you think like if outside looking in, you think that kind of thing results from something like that kind of thing, or like in the midst of it, sort of. Yeah. But to have that be like prior to, ahead of time, like be introductory, if you will.
Yeah.
That just kind of adds an extra layer to it, that it's just kind of like I said, timing is like everything happens for a reason when it happens. Like that kind of was the driving force ultimately. And it's rare that you get the story of a song post song existence.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, while a lot to take in, certainly like a good like level of connection to it and stuff like that, and just how while it's unfortunate that circumstances obviously happened that song meant what it did,
Right.
It's cool to see that it had its impact and held its place and has then since held its weight, held its impact, held its I don't have a third word, kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
that's yeah.
I definitely 100% believe it was a God like planting seeds for me. And yeah, because at that point, like I said, my grandpa got diagnosed, but I literally had no idea what that was. So I
Mhm.
thought it was something with old age. So I kind of like disregarded
Yeah.
it.
That's a fair
And
assumption, I feel like.
yes, because he was in his late 60s at the time. So I was like, oh, like, so I wrote the song and then found out later my dad was like, oh no, this is like a really serious thing and I have to get tested. And then I went, oh, okay. And again, I had already like written that song a year
Hmm.
prior. So yeah,
Wow.
definitely hands working behind the scenes that were not mine.
I feel like that's a safe bet. Yeah. Um, wow. If you had to pick two or three artists that you think your music is like a combination of, who are the
Oh,
vibes?
I know I kind of already said this earlier, but definitely like Avril Lavigne, Paramore, and even though the genre itself is not Taylor-esque, I mean, Taylor's very influential in just how I write music,
Mhm.
which I know basically, like, especially now in present day,
Get that a
every
lot.
artist, females
Get that one a
particularly,
lot.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, I felt like back, and I'm not trying to like gatekeep. It's not like I'm that old, but I'm like, I literally remember telling people, like when I first started playing and writing, I was like, yeah, Taylor's a huge inspiration for me. And again, that was like 14 years ago. And now it's like if you don't say Taylor, then you're like the exception and
Yeah.
not the
It's the
rule.
opposite.
It's like the
Yeah.
total like back then it was very like cutting edge. People were like, "Oh yeah, like Taylor, okay, I can see that." Now everyone's like, who isn't inspired by
Yeah.
that's a great like presence for her to have in the music industry
Yeah.
to like influence so many people. But yeah, and it actually makes it even sweeter that like Taylor and Haley Williams are friends. So yeah, I'm like a little Paramore Taylor uh little fun fact.
I wasn't sure what that was gonna end up with. I a little Taylor Haley like musical love child.
Yes. Yep.
I think that makes sense. I was waiting for just like a secret little like Hannah Montana or like Miley Cyrus to slip in just for that
Oh,
purpose,
oh,
just for the
well,
OG
yeah.
roots. We'll
She's
consider it a
always,
nice like honorable mention.
yes.
You
Oh
got to
my
mention the
gosh.
origin stories. You can't lose touch with your roots.
Oh my gosh. No. Like the Meet Hannah Montana Meet Miley Cyrus tour was literally like life changing. I mean, granted, I was, I don't know, 9, 10, so most things are life changing at that point.
I was gonna
But
say that's
it
that's
was,
that's a pretty low bar, but we
it
love
was
it.
so good though. But okay, so when I said earlier though that like I One Direction ride or die,
Hmm.
her opening was the Jonas Brothers, and I never ever really got into the Joe Bros. I mean, I liked
Oh,
them in Camp Rock and stuff, but I was like, see, that was my anti-boy band phase. I was like, I don't get
okay.
it. I'm not a boy band girl. And then like a few years later, One Direction came out, and I was like, psych. Just needed the right band to come along. I guess.
Yeah, I feel like they've had more of a resurgence than they did like in their OG days.
The Joe Bros or
Yeah.
1D?
No, Joe
Joe
Bros.
Bros, yeah.
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 Yeah, they're
Tell you
doing
about
cool
that.
stuff now. I'm a big John Bellion fan, and that's who like they did their album with and
Oh,
everything.
really?
So like that's a really yeah,
That's a fun fact.
he does cool stuff.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, he did the album with them because he was there when they performed The Wall at was it Saturday Night Live? I think it was Saturday
Okay.
Night Live. Whenever that was months ago now, but he's just yeah.
Okay.
I am like he's the one that made me was like I was like when One Direction and Justin Bieber and even the other like when we were younger big acts, I was like I don't get how somebody can be like so into one person's music or like just like a artist or a group.
Can you
And then I
change
started
that?
listening to John Bellion and I was like, okay, I'm obsessed with this. Like, hold on a second. Maybe
I
I
didn't
get
know
it
he
now.
produced though. That's really
Oh,
cool.
that's like what he's like known more so for. Like
Okay.
he writes a lot. He did Monster, the Eminem and Rihanna song. He did Trumpets,
Oh,
Jason Derulo.
yep.
I'm blanking on some of the other ones. He did a more recent Maroon 5 song. Um I don't remember which one it was,
I
but
guarantee you I probably heard
yeah.
it. It's Maroon
Yeah,
5.
he's done a lot with the Jonas Brothers. He's done a lot with Quinn 92. I've gotten to the point where like I can hear his little like moments and mannerisms on things. So it's like, okay,
You
like
know
I
it's
just go to the
his.
song credits. Let me just double check that I'm right about this.
Yep.
But yeah, he does more so like that stuff. He had like one album that he did that like did well, like commercially. He's been doing it for like a while since then or before then, but he hasn't really done
Mhm.
anything since like his last like two projects that did better. He just has been doing stuff with everybody else now, which I'm a little personally upset about, but I'm gonna let him cook and let him do what he wants to do. So
Yeah, because maybe then he'll be more motivated eventually
I
if
think
he
he's
has
just a
some
man that
break.
likes to be behind the scenes.
That's fair.
Unfortunately, yeah,
But like it's unfortunate for me.
yeah. I mean, I'll just like I wish I could just like easily like how like when you could follow artists in Spotify and be like, oh, so and so released this. I'm like, I want a notification that tells me when something John Bellion like touched is in the
Oh,
vicinity.
just in
Yeah,
his
just
realm anywhere
just like
as a
produced on,
producer.
wrote
Yep.
on, whatever. I just like let me
That
know
would
when
be
that
a
stuff
good
drops.
feature. That'd be a good update.
I don't think
Like
that many
any
people would be looking for that though. I think that might just be me.
I don't know. I feel well, I mean, they'd probably be like the hardcore music nerds, but there are definitely some people that I'd be like, I want to know if they've had anything to do with a project, just so that that'd be a good
Yeah.
update.
Yeah.
Spotify listens.
um I've been doing this thing where I have last week's artist ask a question for this week's artist. Now, I promise they're not all like the one that you that you've gotten. I had a band from Connecticut on last week. Very cool dudes. I usually get more artist-driven questions. They just decided to have a little fun with it. So your
Okay.
question
All right.
is simply put, ketchup or mustard?
Oh, ketchup. Ketchup.
Ketchup?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, ketchup all the way. I mean, I guess I don't have anything against mustard like I did when I was a kid, but it's not my go-to.
I don't know that it's the go-to for anything.
Some
Like
people like for corn dogs or hot dogs, like they prefer, or even on hamburgers, but I'm just not me.
I feel like ketchup is to mustard as like McDonald's is to Burger King. Like the weight is definitely
Is
leaning
so yeah.
in one
No,
favor.
that's a great point.
But it's also
Oh
like,
my
do you like
gosh.
I can't tell you the last time I saw somebody or heard somebody be like, oh, I had like Burger King like last week.
No, you're so right. I
Who's
never hear
keeping them
anyone
in
say that.
business? Who's keeping them in business?
That's so true.
It's like White Castle too.
No.
It's like who's going there and keeping them in business?
I don't think I've ever been to a White Castle. Like I'm very familiar.
Yeah,
I've
driven
driven
past
by
them several
them, but I've
times.
never been. Nope. That's so
Mm-mm.
funny.
That's something you don't need to like try it just to try it. Just like just avoid at all
No.
costs.
Oh yeah. No, no, no.
In case you were curious, just don't.
No, Chick-fil-A is the superior. I mean, it's like
Oh,
bougie
dude,
fast.
that's not even like you're not even giving them a fair chance on that one.
I mean, like even to McDonald's. Like I just think
Yeah, I
Chick-fil-A
think
is superior to all
that's a
fast food.
fair, yeah,
I
yeah.
do Culver's is really good though too. They're like I call Chick-fil-A and Culver's like bougie fast food.
They're solid. I haven't had Culver's in a very long time.
The
So,
cheese curds.
what is your question for next week's artist?
Okay, I'll do something music related. My question will
Get back
be
on track here.
probably not that groundbreaking, but if you could write a song with any,
Ooh,
I wouldn't even say artist, let's just say any person, because not everyone who writes music is an artist. Like, if you
true.
could write a song with any artist or just songwriter in general, who would it be?
What is it that you think sets you apart from other independent artists?
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow. It's so hard because I could tell you like why I think I'm a great artist and why I'm driven, but I'm also like, isn't that, I feel like most independent like artists in general are like, that's what drives us, is like that grind to be better and to always be learning and growing. But again, I'll try and toot my horn and pretend that pretend I'm only thinking about myself in this present moment. Um, so I mean, everyone who writes music has the goal of connecting with people. And I think that that's something that, not that I'm like the greatest songwriter to ever exist, but I am very proud that like there are a lot of my songs, especially like Champion, that have like just transcended any type of expectation I could have ever had as far as like touching people, especially people who are going through Huntington's disease and their own diagnosis and or just any type of adversity at all. And even though I mean, I feel like the adversity I've faced is very trying, just because at any point in time, I mean, God willing, I don't, but at any point in time, I could lose my ability to play, to perform, to sing, to even just do the most basic things like my sister did. So every day I have to get up and like actively choose to live to the fullest and to share my story, even though it's like very scary and very vulnerable. And music has been the best way to do that. And so every single day I'm trying my best to share my lyrics and to also just keep going because as you get older, continuing can sometimes be like imposter syndrome gets at an all-time high the older that you get. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like when I was very young, I was like, I'm gonna be the next blah blah blah. And now I'm almost content though, knowing that like you don't have to be, not everyone's gonna be Taylor Swift level successful. But the fact that like every day I get up and I show up and I choose to be present and grateful and to connect with all the people that either are listening to me online and talking to me virtually or the people that I see at my shows locally, like I just think that like will to work and to share my story will never leave.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to look at it. Like, I feel like a lot of something I've learned over time is that it's like a lot of the way that you view things, not always is like,
Black and white.
well, yes, but like it's a lot of the way you perceive things, whether we recognize it or not, and sometimes it comes with some difficulty. The way you perceive something and the way you have like an outlook on something is ultimately in your hands,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes easier said than done. You know, like you could,
Sure, yeah.
your world could look like it's like coming crumbling down in front of you. And I could say, well, build a new one. But, you know, like that's just the easier said
Yeah.
than done.
Yep.
But it's the ability to kind of have that zoom out and be like, this is this is a small moment, or this, like, you know, like it's one of those things where it's like, if you look back on, like, I'm sure, like, especially doing like the high school album that you did, looking back at some of those songs being like these like heartbreak anthems, feel like it's like just this like absolutely world crushing moment of like, oh my
yes,
God, this boy just
absolutely.
ruined my life. And then you look back and you're
1000%,
like,
yes.
how dumb was that? How over dramatic were we being? You know, like how,
A little bit.
what was I thinking that this was going to just like ruin everything? Because it's like when you're, the less time that you've experienced, the larger a given moment kind of feels, because it's like a larger, it's essentially like at age 14, a month of your life is a larger percentage of your life than it is at 24, you know? And so it's like, it feels like this bigger thing, but then, you know, you grow, you learn more, you experience more random bullshit that just is not ideal. And you learn that that's just kind of how life goes. And so, you know, at some point, the perspective you take on things is kind of ultimately in your hands. And so leaning into that as much as you can and being able to pass that thought process along is killer. You know, like that's champion. That's what we're doing here. That's the brand, that's the vibe, that's the whole cake and the icing on it too, you know?
I love it. No, absolutely. It's the best thing that you can do for yourself is just wake up every day and just, again, despite the bullshit, because there's going to be bullshit every single day.
Yeah.
You're just grateful.
Yeah. The perspective I like to take on it is, it's like you appreciate the pluses when you experience the minuses. Otherwise, everything is just neutral.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. No, that's so true. But yeah, the highs are definitely a lot higher when you've been very low.
Oh, absolutely. It's just like we're going back to the Rocky movies. If he started out a champion, you ain't rooting for him by the end.
Right. Yeah, you need a good underdog.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like it's like rooting for Tom Brady to win his like 50th Super Bowl. You know what I mean? It's like the guy's done it already. Let's move on. Let somebody else win. I'm always an underdog I'm always an underdog fan. Always. Yes. That's just because it's there's more of a story there. There's more to root for. There's more to go for. It's like,
no, there really is. Yeah. That's your homework now. You need to watch Rocky.
I do.
At least the first one.
Okay.
But
how many are
like,
there?
There's 5, and then there's 2 Creed movies, which is like the spinoff.
Creed is a spinoff?
Oh yeah. Are you familiar with Creed?
I've heard of. I don't think I've seen.
So the first
who's the one in Creed?
Michael B. Jordan.
Yep. But I thought I had seen one of those, but I don't think that I have.
I think the first one came out in like 2017 or 18, and then they had the second one came out, I think, a year or 2 ago.
Okay.
So
I thought there was more Rockies for some reason. Maybe I'm thinking of a different franchise.
There's 5 Rockies.
I don't know why I thought there was like 8.
Maybe you're thinking of Harry Potter.
Oh. That'd be 2 very weird franchises to cross.
I mean, I do love both of them.
And I've seen neither of them.
You've seen Harry Potter?
I could not do. Well, okay. I will get probably more shit for what I'm about to say than not having seen it. I've seen the first one, and I've seen part 2 of the last one. So I've seen like the first and last movie. I tried reading the first book when I was in 2nd grade.
Okay.
And that did not go well. I've never like struggled with a book as much as I did that time. I was 9, so go riddle. But then I watched the movie, and then I tried reading the book again. It was fine. I'm just not into that kind of thing.
That's fair. Not everyone is.
A lot of people are, but it's just
I-
I'm just not one of them. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. Everyone has their thing. I mean, there's probably things that I haven't seen that, I mean, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there's got to be something I haven't seen that other people would think is weird, you know?
I don't know. I've just never been I'm not a big like series kind of thing usually. Like it's usually like the big
That's
ones are
fair.
the ones that I just have. Like I hadn't seen Star Wars until college.
Star Wars, I've seen. Star Wars is definitely like, I don't obsess over it. I don't think it's a bad friend. I don't ride or die with it like I do with other ones. So yeah, I get it. I get that. I've seen some, but not all. I
I've
don't
seen
think.
all of them.
Maybe I have.
I
I
grew
don't
up
know.
playing Lego Star Wars and had not seen the movies
Oh,
until a good like decade plus later. So go figure.
see, you
I'm
you
doing
got me
everything in the
there.
wrong order. That's all.
There is no right order.
What impact do you want to have with your music and with your artistry?
Uh, Something that just transcends my individuality, like leaving a greater impact than the song had on me initially. Like,
Ooh.
I think the coolest thing is, regardless of how many people hear a song, especially with like the age that we live in right now, it's going to be there forever.
Mm.
So I think the coolest thing to think about is that, like, you know, 100 years from now, potentially, maybe someone will come across a song that I like, that I wrote, and it will impact them like far beyond my lifetime. So obviously I'll have no way to actually like
Know
confirm or
that.
validate that, but just the fact that like I can write a song for my own emotions or like present feelings and interpretations of my life, and then not only impact people who are presently engaged with my music, but hopefully in the future, like, I just want people to understand that they're more than their current circumstances, but at the same time, all feelings are valid.
Yeah, it's I had this conversation previously. It's like while you can write for like your own personal detail, as we often tend to do, regardless of what or how you package said thing, the overarching concept, story, idea is
Mm-hmm.
more likely than not a very universal experience. Like if you pull it out just a little bit, it's like, okay, like I can, like you write a breakup song, it's like we all kind of get the gist of what's going on there, but it's like it's new and different because it's your details. It's unique to who you are as an artist because it's your story and you packaged it in your way. But the reason that like, you get the songs these days that are like super detailed and specific, like the way, I mean, I in part Taylor has always been, but I feel like has gotten more and more so to be.
Yes.
Um, like with that, it's just like it's like people are like she's a freaking wordsmith in a lot of these like tracks, and then it's just like people are just like identifying with it, and it's just like, where did that like what?
Yeah.
Because it's just like there are so many things that are just universal experiences, and so it's like yeah, like 100%, like the world will be a very different place 100 years from now, but somebody could
Mhm.
100% pick up your song and be like, that shit makes sense,
Yeah.
like that makes sense to me. um and it's just like how we still listen to maybe not 100-year-old songs, get if
Right.
that's your unless that's your taste, but
Yeah.
like songs from
The 20s, the
like
big
the
bands.
Beatles were like
Oh yeah.
60s, I think,
Yeah.
70s maybe.
60s and 70s, I
Yeah,
believe.
like right,
That's
like
so
even
sad.
yeah, like that was still like 50 years ago.
Yeah. No, it's
Like,
crazy how fast time goes by.
and I'm sure people will be listening to it after that. So,
Oh,
um,
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
so it's crazy. But who knows what form they'll be listening to it? Maybe it'll just be like
Yeah.
friggin' like shot into your brain and just
Nope.
like
Nope. 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 Do it in any form. Don't do it that way. Please
Just
don't
like
listen to
in
my
an
music directly
just
in your
like
head.
it's just like one of those like moving marquee things, like one of those like digital marquees that it's just like this like code of things that's just going like on this inside of your brain.
Listen, I think technology is great. Like we said at the
Dystopian.
beginning of this, I myself and thousands of other artists wouldn't be able to release music like we do now without present day technology and streaming. However, no, the whole thought of like, I appreciate Neuralink for like the ability for people who have not been able to like walk or to do things like that. That's great, reconnecting the ability to do that. But the idea that everything could possibly be in our heads, that's that no. Nope. I will die before someone's gonna put a chip in my brain. There's no way. No way. Mm-mm.
Well, if it's
I'll
100 years from now, we'll be good by then.
that's a fair point. Maybe, at some point it'll
They can do whatever
supersede
they
us.
want 100 years from now.
Exactly. No, I'm literally, not to be cliche, because there is that song, "Girl, Put Your Records On," but literally I will turn my record player on and lay on my floor and consume music before I will put a chip in my brain.
Well, yeah, that's an obvious choice, but there will be a day
There probably will
where
be,
that'll be the
but
norm potentially.
woo,
I don't know. I'm making it up as I go. I have no idea, but it's not
I
my
mean,
job to know. So
that's
that's
very
the beauty
fair.
of it.
It'll probably supersede our time, which that's great. I don't want to think about it in this lifetime.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that brings us to the final question, which is
Okay.
ultimately why music?
Oh gosh, why not music? I mean, whether you write it, whether you sing it, whether you listen to it, like you even said in this interview, I say this every time I talk about music with anyone, it's universal. So not every song might reflect your experience, not every genre might be the one that you connect to. But I mean, but that's also the best part. There's so many different types of music that fit so many different types of people and needs and stylistic interests that, like, it's like the best way that we can not only communicate with our own feelings and like discover why we possibly feel the way we do, but also the fact that other people are experiencing it too. Because especially with, you know, again, love and hate relationship with the phone, sometimes it feels like we're also ironically disconnected, even though we're all connected on our phones because we're looking down, we're not communicating. But music is like that one thing, that you can put, like, if you go to a concert, everyone there is there for the same experience, even though a lot of times we feel so disconnected. Like, it's just such a beautiful way to get through life.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's one of those things that you can't really compare to anything else.
No,
You
closest
can't.
thing to magic.
Yeah. Fair point. Yeah. It's interesting because it is like you said, like there's so many different kinds. And while someone might like this like screamo death metal, somebody might be really into like jazz. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah,
there's little corners of the world for everybody. Um, and it's like the one thing that we can all agree upon is like a
yeah,
thing worth having. Um, like that's like the one thing that's universal is like music is dope. That's pretty much the one opinion that the
yeah,
world shares.
yeah,
Um, and so yeah, being able to be creatively involved in it is a really special thing. And to just kind of even just if you're just like seeing what comes of it, or if you're like that was not going to be a word, like devoting everything you do to it, like wherever you fall in that spectrum of things, it's like being given that opportunity to do so
Yeah.
is like, say less. Like, that's it.
Yeah. Something that breaks every single barrier. It,
That's
like
a
you
good way to
said,
put it.
I've never found anyone who hasn't had some type of music that's resonated with them. And when we feel like we're constantly being more and more polarized and pulled apart, it's very incredible that like people will line up to, outside of stadiums or
Yeah.
small bars or theaters to go and watch someone perform.
Yeah. It's crazy. Wow. Awesome. Well, I think that brings us to the end of this episode of the Why Music podcast. Check back again next week for another conversation with another independent artist. Thanks for listening.